Hello, this is the first of two videos on the mindfulness of breathing, the meditation practice. So in the second video, I'm going to take us through the practice. And in this first video, I'm going to say a little bit about the practice. So what is mindfulness? We know that it's become very popular in the secular world and that it's used to treat depression, anxiety, and generally to give us calmer, happier states of mind. So what would I say about mindfulness? Well, I think the first thing to say is that it is giving a particular sort of attention to our experience. In a way, it's a very natural way of giving attention. But a lot of the time we're distracted, our mind's going in lots of directions, and that's quite natural. So we're actually honing our attention, bringing our attention to a focus, and that focus in this case is the breathing process. But it's a warm attention. It's not an attention that is a bit like a scientific observer of ourselves. It's an engaged attention. So it's an attention that's interested and curious, but also definitely has a warmth to it. And also an aliveness, an openness, receptivity. And that alive quality comes from our interest. So we decide we want to meditate and we're willing to give our attention in a warm, accepting, interested way. That probably is enough on what I would say about mindfulness at this stage. So when we apply mindfulness, we use an anchor, and in this case, we use the breath as an anchor. The anchor could be all sorts of things. It could be a flame that we're looking at. But generally, when we do the mindfulness of breathing, we tend to have our eyes closed unless we're going to fall asleep, and then it's best to keep your eyes open. If you need your eyes open, you can gaze at the floor about 4 or 5 feet in front of you. The eyes gently cast down, allowing the whole face to be soft. If we've got our eyes closed, in a way it can be easier because it means that we're not going to be so distracted by our vision. So when we bring attention to the breath, it's quite hard not to control the breath. And you might find that you are actually controlling it a bit. Don't worry about that. If it gets too uncomfortable, if you feel you're really controlling the breath, just stop meditating for a minute or two. Just let go. I'm not meditating, I'm just sitting here. And then, when you feel more relaxed, you can go back to giving attention to the breath. The next thing is to remember that meditation is a practice. We talk about meditation practice. We can't perfect it overnight. It needs time, and it needs us to keep doing it. So I would really recommend that if you want to see whether meditation is for you, whether it makes a difference to your life, you really need to do it a little bit every day. It's worth trying that just for a few months so that you give it a chance to really have an effect. If you just do it once a week, you can't really hope to have much of an effect. So we're not looking to change the breath in any way, but it does sometimes help at the beginning of the practice if we just let go deeply into 1 or 2 out breaths. So what we don't want to do is increase the in-breath, because if we do, what happens is we're breathing into our chest, and we don't want to be doing that. We want the breath to be nice and low in the body. And if we breathe out, if I let go of my breath, if I breathe out and I breathe out and I breathe out and I keep breathing out right to the very end, that can feel very relaxing. And sometimes I just rest right at the end of the out breath without grabbing for another in breath. And there's a lovely spaciousness, a sense of spaciousness there. So I'm just going to say briefly something about the stages of the mindfulness of breathing. But as I often say, the stages are not the full meditation. And that is because meditation is an experience. So those stages are like anchors. They're ways that we learn the practice. So we don't want to get too fixated. So in the first two stages, we use the anchor of a count. We've got the breath. The breath is our main anchor. But we also use a quiet count. So we say a number to ourselves with each out-breath. So the first stage, we drop in a quiet count at the end of each out-breath. So a breath happens naturally, and then as we breathe out, we follow the breath, we're interested in the breath, we follow it right to its very end, and we drop in 1. And we breathe in and we breathe out 2. Breathe in, breathe out 3. But we only go to number 10. And the reason we do that is because it's easy to get lost and it's easy to forget where we are. And that's fine. No problem with that. But when we notice, oh, I've got up to 14. I only intended to get up to 10. We know we've lost our concentration. Or perhaps we only get to 3 and we think, what number was I on? Okay, just start from 1 again. We're not trying to perfect our counting. We know we can count. So most of our attention is going to the breath, not to the count. The count is we keep it very quiet and soft. We might find that a number appears in our mind. That's okay, just let it go. So it's the breath that we are wanting to give our attention to in a soft, natural way. We're aware of the in-breath, we're aware of its coolness, we're aware of whether the breath is long or short, soft or harsh. Just noticing, how is the breath? And we follow it right to the end in this first stage, and we drop in the quiet count from 1 to 10. And don't worry if you never get to 10, that's fine. So in the second stage, it's very similar, except now the count is at the start of the in-breath. Right at the very start, as we're just about to breathe in, we drop in 1. Just as we're about to take the second in-breath, 2. So it's almost the same place, but maybe not quite. In the third stage, we drop the count, but of course we can keep it if we find ourselves getting very distracted. But what we do is we have a more broad awareness of the breath and we follow it all the way into our body and all the way out of our body. We get a full experience as we can of the breath. And if we want a different sort of anchor to the number counting, we could focus on one part of our body where we have a sense of contentment in the breath. That might be the belly, it might be the chest, it might be the throat. So we notice the breath, we give attention to the breath, that warm attention, and we maybe choose a place in the body where we're particularly giving it attention. And then we come to the final stage. And in the final stage, instead of having that broad awareness, we're going to give attention to a particular place where the breath first enters our nostrils or our upper lip or our mouth, where we can feel, where we can have a sensation of the breath. So it's much cooler as it enters the body. So we just give attention to that. Where can I feel it? Now, my left nostril isn't very sensitive, but my right nostril is. So very often it's somewhere just around the edge of the right nostril that I can sense the breath, its coolness, just coming into the right nostril. But it might be somewhere else for you. So we're giving particular attention. It's almost like we guard that place with our attention. Not in a hard way, not in a harsh way. Just noticing, just feeling. that fine sensation. Okay, so that's enough, but do have a listen to this video before you do the practice if you've never done it before. And actually, you might just want this as a reminder as well. We can always go back and refresh what we know.